Oh wow, would you look at that? It's an album review right to your door. Right now we're talking about the sophomore album of the post-punk band Yard Act, where they just recently released Where's My Utopia, which I believe was released March 1st and is just to kick it off, I think a great improvement on their first album, Overload, which surprisingly was not overloaded with a bunch of stuff on it, and honestly kind of got boring to me. Didn't feel adventurous. Kind of felt like your standard like cookie cutter like post punk album that I just didn't do anything that really made it stand out or made you want to go back and listen to it. So when I originally saw that they had a bunch of these this new album getting announced, I wasn't that interested in it just because I was like, oh, the first one, how much can they improve on it? Because the big criticism they had was, oh, they're not adventurous enough with the sound. They don't take as many experimental risks with it, and it was just kind of frankly boring. And they took that to heart on this second album, which I love to see that from this band, where they truly evolved the sound, and it's so night and day. Just to give it of some like background of it, it's called Where's My Utopia, and it just deals with this just with the way of the instrumentation, which I'll get to in a second, to the lyrics, to how they sing in it, of this concept of wanting this like utopia and finding out that it doesn't really exist, which is this like melancholy, depressing, and moody realization that's in all the songs in it that I do like. And it just, obviously, as I said before, just evolved from this bland post punk in their debut album Overload to like this disco based kind of like dance punk sound that I'm a big fan of. I dig the grooves, the bass grooves in it. I wasn't big on James Smith, who's the lead vocalist in the debut album, and on this one, I'm pretty big fan of his lyrics and vocals mix well with it, where he can go from this singing from this very not powerful but moody ambient sounds of like strain his voice of like this depressing energy to the spoken word almost. I'm a big fan of it that was absent from the debut album and is hugely needed and added to this album. And then I think the only one of the downsides I can say for the album off the bat is at certain parts of it, it does feel a bit too grandiose with what they're going for. And when you have like this message of like, where's this utopia? I've been looking for it. I've been told about it, and it's not here. When it gets kind of lost in the sound and the sonic space of just the strings, the cello, the violin, the viola, the chord progression, the bass, when it gets lost in all of that for long periods of time on some of these songs, it does make it hard to listen to, which was something that I did notice of it, which does suck for it. But I do think the instrumentation that they used in it, as I said before, the violin, viola, cello, the strings. They also had flute and saxophone, which I didn't mention before, but those are in there. Obviously, bass grooves really ring out in songs like Down by the Stream. That one just has some really good bass grooves that are amplified by James Smith's like the spoken word he does that I said before. And this album, they were pretty self-aware at certain parts. Like one of their singles, We Make Hits, is so self-aware about the commercial popularity right now of post-punk. It's super funny to talk about getting signed by like I believe one of the Universal record labels. And it's very entertaining and made it a pretty fun song to listen to. The starting song, A Illusion, has these like soft vocals of like this pain and strain that I was kind of mentioning before. And the latter half, it sets the stage of like this realization of there is like no utopia, this like bitterness of it, that there might not be anything out there, and it's very depressing and haunting at points, but it just works very well. And then one of the other highlights I can say for it is the undertow. The string progression on it, amazing. The layered vocals between, and throughout this album they have these new singers come in for certain tracks, which I dig because it just changes and makes each song pretty unique on it. This choir sound that they used on The Undertow and some other songs on there, but on this one, I liked it the best. Just amazing. Strings, obviously, 10 out of 10. Cannot praise that enough of the sound and how much improvement they did to it from the first album to the second one, which I think after the first album, they didn't need to do a lot more to make it better, which is impressive of what they're able to do because obviously I've said it before now, but I was not the biggest fan of the Overload, but this album, I maybe would have rated it like a 3 or a 4, honestly. It just was boring to me. It didn't stand out. And on this album, I have to rate it an 8. Just that's what I'm giving it. I loved the sounds they went with it. This very groovy kind of dance numbery album that at certain points was a bit too much for me in terms of like when you're trying to do these like atmospheric not atmospheric what is it, storytelling kind of albums and fitting this narrative. You really want to get to the point with it at certain points, or you would need the songs to be longer. So at certain points, whenever you kind of get the idea near the end of the song, but you had to go through and wade through all like these other sounds, instrumentations, drawn out vocals that at certain points work and at certain points doesn't work. So I liked the album, and as I said before, I'm giving it an 8. Was very pleasantly surprised by this album. I enjoyed it a lot, and it's currently is a highlight already for March, and I think is one of the best albums that will come out from March, but we'll just have to let time tell. But anyways, that was Where's My Utopia by Yard Act. I'll see you all later.